June 20th, 2005, item number 52. Today's guest is Scott Fletcher from Podcheck Weekly.
Podcast411.com. Listen different.
I'm your host, Rob, and this is the Podcast 411 podcast. Before we get into the interview with Scott, a few quick news and notes. First off, this week, as I mentioned previously, I'll be going to Seattle to the Gnome Deck show. While I'm at the show, I plan to do some releases of news updates from the show. We know for sure that Audible will be making an announcement regarding podcasting, and any other good news and notes and rumors we will be reporting, because often where there's smoke, there's fire. You'll be able to tell these reports when they come in, because I'm going to change the song title, and it'll be 411_GDEX001, 002, and so on. Also, these will only be available on the RSS feed, so if you want to hear these and you're listening from the website, please subscribe at podcast411.com/feed.xml. Again, they will not be put up on the website. They will only be available via the RSS subscription. So hopefully you'll enjoy these. The sound quality will probably be a little bit less than normal. They'll probably be raw recordings with almost little to no editing. I have not mentioned this in a while, but we have a voicemail number, and that is 206-666-HELP. Again, 206-666-HELP. Please leave a voicemail message for us. Let us know how we're doing, and we'll try to play your messages if they warrant it on the show. And speaking of that, here is a message we received with regards to our tech tip from last week.
Hey, Rob, this is Craig with the Bits of Silicon Hell podcast. And I just wanted to call and leave a message and let you know that the tech tip that you had in your last show about recovering from Audacity saved the last episode of Bits of Silicon Hell. We had about an hour and a half worth of recording done on Skype with 3 guests, and just as I had stopped the recorder and was finishing up on Skype and saying goodbye to everybody, my computer froze, and I had no idea how I was going to get it recovered until I remembered that I had heard the tech tip on Podcast 411. So I just wanted to call and give a big thanks, and also please pass on my thanks to Ed at the Casey Weather Podcast. Have a great day. Thanks.
Well, Craig, thanks for the feedback, and I'm sure I speak for Ed when I say we're very happy we were able to help. Well, that's going to do it for the news and notes today. We're going to go ahead and get right into the interview with Scott Fletcher from Podcheck Weekly. Here we go. Scott, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Good to be here. And
I'm going to start you out with the traditional first question, and that is, what was your first computer?
Well, the first one I owned, I got it in college. I was kind of a late bloomer to the ownership. I got a Macintosh LC, the only color Macintosh that I could afford, and the computer lab at college had all Macintoshes, so that's where I learned. But I always like to think of my first computer that I got, 1983, an Apple II that my mom let me rent from the Computer Land in Billings, Montana. They had this deal where you go in on Friday and you pay them $15, and they let you take the Apple II and the green screen monitor home over the weekend, and you bring it back on Monday. So $15 was a lot easier than $1,500, and that was something that we could afford.
Scott, what was the first podcast you listened to?
The first podcast I listened to wasn't a podcast when I listened to it. It was .NET Rocks with Carl Franklin and Roy Blythe, and I listened to that pretty much all last summer because by day, I'm a mild-mannered computer programmer and software developer, and .NET Rocks was just a great resource for information for C# and .NET developers. And then about in August of last year, I think I heard one of the guys mention this thing called podcasting, and they mentioned this Adam Curry guy, and I remembered Adam from the MTV days, just watching him, not as a friend. But I didn't get it. Podcasting, what? I don't have an iPod. That doesn't mean anything to me. So I just kept listening conventionally via the .NET Rocks website. I finally clicked on the little XML button that they had, and I saw the file, and I thought, that's way too simple. It can't be that simple. So in about December, I decided, I need to start looking into this and start getting my developer head around the technology for this podcasting thing. So .NET Rocks was the first podcast.
What ones are you listening to on a regular basis today?
I'm listening to yours.
Well, thank you.
I've added yours to my Doppler. I listened to the PK&J show. They're one of the first ones that I hooked up with.
Paul and Jeanette, Paul is such a great guy.
Oh, he is. They're both great. They're both great. So kind and
Jeanette
honest and genuine.
And Jeanette has the sexiest voice.
Jeanette. Oh, my God. Yeah, she's this foul-mouthed sex kitten. I also listen to The Distorted View Show with Tim Henson. I also listen to Area 51, the highly produced sort of sketch radio / rant comedy done by a couple of guys out on the East Coast. Also Radio Clash with Tim. He does a bunch of mashups over in Europe. He's just got this sort of nice, cool, easy vibe. And he's got good taste in the mashups that he plays. So I listen to that. Listen to the Podcast Brothers. Of course, again, the Polymorphic Podcast with Craig Shoemaker.
Which makes a lot of sense since you mentioned that you are a .NET person, and that's what Craig's show is all about.
Right, and it's different from .NET Rocks because Craig's Polymorphic Podcast is usually only about 15 or 20 minutes long, and it covers one topic, and he takes you through from start to finish, usually. And it's much more of a walkthrough than it is sort of a general industry conversation about something, which has value. But, when I'm working overnights trying to do an implementation and I need just a quick break, I'll tune in Polymorphic Podcast. Of course, I listen to Michael Gohagen's Real Reviews. I think my hit rate on movies that I've seen that he's actually mentioned is, I think I've seen 2 out of 10. He's talking about these great movies that I really need to see, like Rear Window and Heat and, on and on and on. That's what I like about his show, because he talks about shows that I haven't seen yet. And I need to, I make my laundry list of shows that I need to watch with my wife. Probably the last one on my list is The Bitterest Pill with Dan Class. Yeah.
And Dan and Mike are teaming up to write a book.
Yes. Hopefully coming out soon. I worry a little bit about going over to the Podcast Expo in November, because there are going to be great people. We're going to have a great time, and we're going to be just partying like we're in high school, I think. At least I am. Maybe I'll be alone drinking in the corner. But thinking about how irresponsible I'm going to be a little bit on a couple of those nights, I wonder how much of this is going to be like a high school reunion, where it's, hi, how you doing, Bob? Haven't seen you in a while. Yeah, how's it going? Well, I have 2,000 listeners to my podcast. How about you? And the little honest guy who doesn't know that other people are lying about their subscribers. I have 50 people listening. 10 of those are my relatives, and so I wonder how much of a pissing contest that's going to be, and how long it'll take us to get past that. And who is going to be doing that? That'll be interesting, more interesting for me to see than just not how many people, but what kinds of people are walking around talking about their numbers and stuff.
Tell our listeners about the format and the content of your podcast.
It's a weekly show where I have a list of news stories and I make fun of them. I've been struggling with this because I knew you were going to ask me that. And I was trying to come up with an explanation of my show that wasn't The Daily Show, that wasn't Jon Stewart. But I didn't set out to model after Jon Stewart, but now that I've been doing it a while, that's kind of where I'm heading with it. It's serious news, so anyone who's interested in podcasting can tune in for 10 or 15 or 20 minutes a week and pretty much get the headlines. But also, I don't usually hold back on whether or not I think something has merit, because I do a lot of praising on the show, but I also do a little bit of reality check. People who spun up the hype machine a little too early.
Oh, that is a perfect segue. Let me play this clip I have set up. And you have no idea about that.
Considering submitting your podcast to KYOU Radio, then you might be interested in this story from the International Nanocasting Alliance, a trade organization dedicated to hijacking the podcasting movement by renaming it and then claiming all credit for its success. Okay, no, that's not really their slogan. I just made that up. I'm sure there's nothing wrong with renaming a commonly accepted concept like podcasting and calling it instead nanocasting. Considering that most of us listen to our nanocast on our nanopod while driving to work in our Automo car. Whatever.
And I'll probably cut that halfway through. But that gives a good feel in, what, like you said, where you get on people that overhype in the podcasting world. You are going to be that voice of reason, the Jon Stewart. Sorry.
Well, I'm certainly one of those voices. There are other people that...
But you do it in a funny, humorous way.
Well, Well, comedy is the first step to conversion, right? It's a great persuasive tool. And I can't make stuff that's not true funny. There's truth in comedy. And it's just so easy to see through some of the marketing pap, People spending so much money and worrying about how they're going to get in and position themselves. They get so wrapped up in that, and you're going to see a ton of it in the next 6 months now that iTunes is coming out. Oh, my God. I'm going to have material for like a year and a half. What we're going to see, though, however, is our little podcast, the Podcast 411 and Podcheck and the Distorted View Daily are going to be sort of relegated to this smaller, what I think is a higher value community, while the Coca-Colas and the large news organizations and Viacom come in and start blasting their message in all the different media outlets, TV, radio, web, and podcasting and paid for positioning that I expect to see on iTunes. They're just going to try to drown us out, because they don't want us, these little people with no ties to them, to have any of the market share. That's just competition. That's just capitalism, and that's a great thing. But I don't think it's going to work, because with our little word-of-mouth networking, and you telling a friend who tells a friend who tells a friend, and then a little news story in a newspaper, we don't lose our listeners. We don't have to worry about competition so much as we just have to worry about doing what we're doing and keeping true to it. And if we don't have any corporate ties to advertising, if we don't have any conflicts like we talked a little bit about earlier, if I'm not advertising for Microsoft, I can feel free to blast Microsoft when they screw up. But if Microsoft were to sponsor my show, I'd really have to think twice about, do I crap in my own backyard? I don't like having those problems. And
before you did this podcast, you had mentioned in the last show that someone busted you and said, hey, you used to do another podcast. Tell us a little bit about your previous podcast.
Oh, my. Before I start talking about it, I'll preface it with saying I almost decided to take it down and pretend like it never happened. But but I decided, no, I got to stay true to it. So I mentioned that my first podcast was January 2nd, 2005. And I did this podcast about a news story. And my whole bit, I was going to do something called Almost Translated News, where I went to a foreign language newspaper and I ran it through the Google Translator. And then I would read how Google translated it. So if you go to a German website...
Did you ever read by Philip K. Dick, Galactic Pod Healer?
Oh, no, I didn't.
He has that. They play a game in that book where that's what they do. They have a game in the book where the people in different parts of the world, and they would take something and they would convert it. So like lifting little yellow fowl would be an example. And that, of course, is picking up chicks.
That's cool. That's really cool.
So Galactic Pod Healer by Philip K. Dick is where that was introduced in the 1960s. He was talking about computers translating words from one language and then back into another language and what you got.
Wow. Philip K. Dick, the most underrated sci-fi writer of all time.
My favorite. I love his work.
Unbeknownst to me, here I am doing an homage to Philip K. Dick. So that was my first thing. And I plan to do the Almost Translated News like every week or every month and never stop doing it. So I did like 2 of those. It wasn't that interesting. After the first bit, once you've translated German to English using Google, it's kind of a one-shot joke. It was very funny, and you can actually hear it by going to diagonaluniverse.com. All my early podcasts are out there, including my Drunk Cast What's Up with the Man Bitch cast that I did in April as an homage to the Drunk Cast that PK&J show did.
But this is your regular voice right now.
It is.
And you had mentioned in email it's a blessing and a curse.
Oh, you can imagine. First thing out of everyone's mouth is, boy, you've got a great voice for radio. And I don't know if I really want that, Because when I hear other people talk, and when I think they have a great voice for radio, I think, oh, wow, they're really trying to sound like they're on the radio. And, dude, I am so not trying.
Now, I was going to say, someone told me the other day, they go, you have a great voice for NPR. And I'm like, does that mean I make you want to yawn and go to sleep? What does that mean? I didn't know how to take that one. I'm like, great. No. I put people to sleep, and my voice is so bad you can't even put a commercial in there.
My wife isn't into the podcasting thing, but I'll force her to listen to some podcasts while we're in the car together. And she has mentioned that she's somewhat surprised at how much some of these podcasters don't sound like radio people. And I think that's, one of the charms. You can hear anybody, just like you're walking down the street. Damn it, these are real people. And a regular old voice on the microphone tells you that they are a normal person, and there's nothing wrong with that. Dang it. But it's the same thing. If you walk down the street and you see regular people, and then you see the real attractive person, everybody's eyes snap over there and say, oh, wow, that's a really attractive person.
So we can describe your voice as the 36 double Ds with the tight butt.
It's not her fault. It's not my fault. I was just born this way.
Yeah, that belly ring and the tattoo on the back.
That's right.
No low-riding jeans. Yeah.
God. Oh, dear. So, once you get to know the person, though, they're just like everybody else.
No, you are truly, you are an uber geek. I mean, you were playing with computers at a young age. You're doing .NET for your work. I mean, you don't get much nerdier than that.
No, you don't. No, you don't. I don't wear glasses, but I thought maybe I should get some.
Tell our listeners how to locate your podcast and website.
www.podcheck.com.
What software are you using to do the editing?
Well, just like John from the M Show, I, too, use Goldwave. Goldwave is great. Goldwave, come sponsor my show. Only $10. I love the fact that it's really stable. I mean, my entire operating system can come crashing down, but Goldwave still keeps recording and writing to disk. So I've never lost a recording. So I'll record it in Goldwave, get about an hour's worth of audio. I'll then chop out the dead spots and the extraneous stuff using Goldwave. Then I bring it into Acid Music Studio by Sony. I like the fact that they have soft clip edges on their edits, and it's real-time rendering. I don't have to pre-render the audio to listen to the mix. It's just a really nice program, and it was only $50. Goldwave was $50. Acid Music Studio is $50. That's it. I got a podcast. Plus, Acid Music Studio comes with a bunch of license-free music clips. So all the music in my shows are non-RIAA. They're all pod safe, and I plan to keep it that way.
And what are you using for a microphone?
Right. Audio-Technica 3035. It's an upgrade from a Benson B98, which is an upgrade from a tin can and a piece of string. Which is what I started with. Oh, boy. So, yeah, I went up to a large diaphragm microphone because the Benson, the kind of like a Shure SM58, just didn't have the warmth that I was looking for. I got the Audio-Technica 3035 microphone with a very inexpensive Behringer mixer to provide some phantom power to the microphone, and a very inexpensive Composer Pro limiter by Behringer as well, sort of make my voice crunchy and deep and take out all the breath sounds and my cat purring in the background and stuff.
What advice would you like to offer those starting a podcast today?
Number one, really be honest with yourself why you want to do the podcast. The first podcast that most people do is because they just want to say they did it, which is cool. That's valid. The second thing that normally turns into is, wow, I really like this. I'm going to go try to make money with it. The third thing that happens is after about the fourth week, and they only have 80 or 40 subscribers, and every subscriber is someone that they know, then they want to quit. As I mentioned in a previous podcast that you'll find over at diagonaluniverse.com, that's okay. You can quit. You don't have to keep on podcasting, complaining about how no one is listening. It's all right. But it can be this very fun thing between a group of 10 people. You don't need a huge audience to have good time podcasting.
I noticed you had some Amazon links on your site.
Right. I have a link for Todd Cochran's podcasting book because I felt that I owed that to him.
And has anyone bought it through the Amazon site yet?
No. Well, let me tell you, it's funny because a couple days ago I got this email from Amazon. Hello, associate. We noticed that you were accepted to the Amazon.com associate program several weeks ago, but have yet to refer an order. Here are 3 quick and easy steps to help you get started. As if their advice is going to help increase my sales. No, I haven't gotten a penny. And I'm hawking iRivers on my website. I'm hawking the podcasting book, and not a dime, which just goes to show you people are not going to my webcast or my webpage. They're all just subscribing with the Doppler or whatever. Now, I have had about probably 10% or 15% of the people who actually listen to the Podcheck Weekly Review go to the website and click the link to download the file. The other 85% are retrieving it through an iPodder client.
Well, Scott, thank you so much for coming on the show.
That was a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, folks, that concludes our interview with Scott Fletcher. You can check out his podcast, and I highly recommend you do, at www.podcheck.com. If you're into information and news about podcasting, this is a great, funny place to get that news and information. Well, coming up on our next show, which will be Wednesday the 22nd, our guest will be Eric from the Force.net podcast. So all you fellow uber geek Star Wars fans, this is one you don't want to miss. I really had a great time talking to Eric about Star Wars, and, well, if you know me, you know that this was one I really enjoyed doing. All right, at the end of today's show, we'll be playing a promo from PodQuiz Podcast, the PodQuiz Podcast. This was one that I meant to have on the end of last show. Just problem between the keyboard and a chair on that one, folks. One last comment before I go. I'd just like to thank everybody that's gone over this month and voted for us at Podcast Alley. We really appreciate the love. If you haven't voted for us and you are enjoying the show, please take a minute or two out of your day to go over and vote for us at Podcast Alley. There's even a link right from our main page at www.podcast411.com to make life a little bit easier. Again, just takes a couple minutes, and we really appreciate the support. That's going to do it for us today. As always, this is Rob from Podcast 411 reminding you to listen different.
Question 1.
How can I become rich and famous?
Question 2.
What's the meaning of life?
Question 3.
Where can I find a fun weekly trivia quiz podcast? The answer to at least one of these questions can be found by visiting www.podquiz.com. That's www.podquiz.com.